Hey babies, and welcome back to my channel. By now I am pretty sure we have all heard about Annabelle one way or another, right? It's crazy because a lot of us mainly heard about her story because of the movie, but then I got curious and I started doing my own research about the famous Annabelle doll. And to be honest, it is pretty interesting, so that is what we're going to be talking about today. But let's be honest, even after watching the Annabelle movie, we have all questioned several things. For example, is the doll really as evil as they put her in the movies? Did the Warrens really keep the doll with a demon? The real Annabelle was given to Donna, who at the time was a student nurse. It was actually a birthday gift from her mother. And one important fact to remember is that Annabelle was bought secondhand from a store. Donna was actually living with a friend at the time when she got Annabelle. And of course, she was very excited with her gift, of course, at first. But Annabelle quickly became a source of great fear for both her and her roommate. Annabelle was only making what we could call small movements at the beginning. Little things, like you thinking you just misplaced the doll, like putting her on the floor instead of the bed and then a chair or vice versa. But then she escalated. She started appearing in the couch instead of the bed or outside of the roommate's door whose name was Angie, instead of Donna thinking that she actually left her in her room. Now, the girls had a friend whose name was Lou. Now, when Lou met Annabelle, it was completely scared of her. He believed that it was completely evil, it was possessed, or something had to be done about Annabelle. But Donna and her roommate Angie were not so sure about it. At the time, they still didn't see anything strange about her and believed that it was only their fault when Annabelle went move. That would soon about to change because a little Annabelle friend became sinister very quickly. Girls started finding notes around the apartment. The weirdest thing about it is that the notes were written in a type of paper that the girls did not even have at the time in the apartment and had actually never seen before. The notes would say so many things, but most of the time was things like help Lou or help us. Unfortunately, Annabelle was found with blood on her hands. Donna came from work one night and found her in her usual spot on the bed, but she literally had blood on her hands. It seemed like the blood or red liquid or whatever it was coming from Annabelle herself. And that was it, at least for her. It was time for the girls to call in for help in the form of a medium to find out what was going on with the doll before things got any worse. So the girls were able to find a medium, and he actually sat down with both Angie and Donna and the Annabelle doll as well. And the story that Donna and Angie were told is that basically the land on which their apartment complex was built used to be a field. And a little girl around 7 years old was found dead there many years before. So when the doll came into their apartment, the Annabelle spirit was still in the area in which she had died. And because she was fond of the doll, the spirit became one with it. So Annabelle became the doll. Unfortunately, that also meant the haunted doll. But Donna and her friend in this case were very loving and giving people. However, in a way or two, after everything Annabelle had done up to that point, they felt sorry for the girl that was found alone in that field, and they decided they wanted the doll to stay because they didn't want her to feel left alone. But that was never going to last because things escalated very quickly when Lou was actually the person who was attacked by Annabelle before the Warrens were called in. Maybe the doll just didn't like him, or maybe he reminded him of a man who had treated her badly in her life. But he was the one person she showed her true self to. And that was the main reason to call the Warrens. So the Warrens were Edward and Lorraine. Edward lived from 1926 all the way to 2006, and Lorraine actually passed away in 2019. They were paranormal investigators, and they were pretty much known for haunted cases. So Edward was pretty much self-taught, and he was an author and a lecturer. Now, Lorraine, on the other hand, she claimed herself to be a clairvoyant and a life trance medium who worked very closely with her husband most of the time they were married. They're now known for so many things that they did, like they founded the New England Society for Psychic Research. They author many books about paranormal and about their private investigations. They claim to have investigated well over 10,000 cases during their career. So you would understand why they would call Ed and Lorraine or even think of it. But back to the story, a few things occurred, including bad dreams and some visions of Annabelle. But the actual thing that made the girls call Ed and Lorraine was a physical attack. As we could tell, our little girl Annabelle was progressing pretty fast. So one day, Angie and Lou were spending some time together when they heard movement coming from Donna's room. Now, the weird thing is that Donna was not even home at the moment. So the two found themselves being so scared they thought it was an intruder at first, which is the most common thing to think of if you're in a situation like that. But then they quickly realized that the movement was coming from, in fact, our very little friend Annabelle. But Lou decided to be a man, decided to be brave, and be the one to check inside Donna's room. And of course, he finds that there's no one inside except for Annabelle, who was sitting on the bed where she should have been. So Lou moved forward towards Annabelle and had a feeling that literally like crept over him immediately. You know that feeling when you know something terrible is about to happen? Like, yes, he felt that. And he basically felt pain on his chest and realized that he actually had claw marks, like if someone had literally jumped over him and roughly scratched him. But of course, let's remember that nobody was in the room, so he knew in that exact same moment that the scratches were from Annabelle. What's even weirder about this is that the scratches being so deep, like he had them at first, they basically vanished after 2 days. There was completely no trace of them, no marks, nothing. It was like they never happened. So that is the moment where Ed and Lorraine come in. A priest was also called in when it was discovered that Annabelle's main goal was the possession of Donna's soul. That's what she wanted. So then Ed and Lorraine explained to the girls that demons pretty much don't possess items. Instead, they like to possess people. So the priest eventually had to do an exorcism in the girls' apartment, and they took Annabelle with them. So both Ed and Lorraine pretty much agreed that it would be best to drive home on the back of the road, worried that if they drove on the main highway, the Annabelle would try to be sneaky and find a way to cause an accident. Which, as expected, to be fair, she did. They had many problems with the car driving back home. One of the problems was the power steering failed, the brakes failed, and the engine kept giving them problems. So, of course, Annabelle found her way of giving them a headache, one way or the other. But Ed had the idea that actually stopped Annabelle for a while, and that idea was to sprinkle her with a little bit of holy water. Now, once they got home, they decided, well, pretty much Ed decided on his own that it was a good idea to put Annabelle on his desk. But Annabelle couldn't resist herself. She literally went into the new house showing what she was made of. Annabelle was rising above the desk on multiple occasions. The Warrens managed to keep it under control and slowed it down for a while. But she was found in different rooms of the house, moving around. The Warrens would put her in one place and she would quickly move to another. So Ed and Lorraine decided to find a permanent solution. So what they thought of was calling the priest once again. But he didn't take it too seriously and basically said that Annabelle couldn't hurt anybody because she was only adult. And that was a mistake because he found himself in a car accident while trying to transport Annabelle on his way home. His car was pretty much turned over, the brakes failed, and his car was completely written off. He was pretty much badly hurt, but he did survive. Now, Ed and Lorraine were clearly adventurous and passionate about their work. They were not the type of people to get rid of the stuff of cases that they have worked on. So everything possessed that they encountered, they pretty much kept and made it a museum in their house. So they have Annabelle. Annabelle is still around today, and there's many movies inspired by her. She is currently residing in a glass case that the Warrens built to keep her from getting free and, going around the house. There is, of course, a warning in the case saying do not touch, as well as a cross. Some say that they have seen the doll moving around the case, wanting her to get freed, basically.